Very much. It's my first time being here since the new technology, everything here. So we shall call this meeting to order. If we could have a roll call.
Of course. Commissioner Tainer? Commissioner McNerney?
Here.
Commissioner Aziz?
Here.
Commissioner Galassi? Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Vice Chair Matsuno?
Here.
And Chair Caldwell.
Here. Thank you very much. If we could move to our salute to the flag, if I could have Commissioner Jackson lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I believe the next item that we have is item D. It's approval of the order of the agenda. If I could ask if staff had any requests or needs to change the agenda?
We do not have any suggestions, no.
I would entertain a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
I'll second.
And we have a second. If we could have a roll call.
Oh, roll call vote? Is
Correct.
that, okay, of course. Commissioner McNerney?
Here.
Yes, you're,
Aye.
yeah, got it.
I was looking for the word. Aye.
You got it. Commissioner Aziz?
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Matsuno?
Yes.
And Chair Caldwell.
Yes. So the next item that we have is blue folder items, additional backup materials, and I do believe that we received an email blue folder item earlier.
That is correct.
Is that
It's
the only
just
one?
One email, and it's for the request for 2501 Curtis Avenue, and it was one public comment.
Has everybody had a chance to review that?
Yes.
If I can get a motion to receive and file?
Also move.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
And we shall move to a roll call.
Any opposed?
None?
Great.
Seeing none. All right. So we shall now move to the consent calendar. We do have two items, item F1 and F2. The first is to approve the affidavit of posting for the Preservation Commission regular meeting of July 6, 2022, this meeting. And of course, the approval of the minutes of the Preservation Commission regular meeting of May 4th, 2022.
I will move to approve the affidavit of posting and the minutes of the Preservation Commission from May 4th.
I'll second.
And we have a second. Should we just do it all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Are there any opposed?
Yes.
Seeing and hearing none. Then we shall move to the excluded consent calendar items. I don't believe we have any.
We do not.
And then we have public participation on non-agenda items. Do we have any member of the public that would like to speak on non-agenda items?
It does not appear so.
Excellent. So that would move us to ex parte communications. And I believe, I know I missed the last meeting, but the one before that, we did have a question about ex parte communication. So maybe if staff could give us just a quick overview of what an ex parte communication or what we would need to disclose here.
Right. You're disclosing if you spoke to anyone within the public or amongst the commission about any of the agenda items, the public hearing items.
Thank you very much. Does any member of the commission have any item to disclose related to ex parte communications?
Would that include communications with staff? So I did email a couple questions to staff about the Curtis Avenue.
About Curtis?
Yes.
All right. That shall be reflected in the record. Does anybody else?
No.
All right. We're cruising. We are now on item J, our public hearings. And this is the time and place to conduct a public hearing to consider items J1 and J2, which we'll take up separately. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to open.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
A A motion and second have been made to open the public hearing. Are there any objections? Hearing none, it is so ordered.
Chair Caldwell, this might be a good time to ask for the audience oath.
Oh, yes. And we do have 3 members of the public here. Are each of you expecting to speak on an agendized item during the public hearing?
Maybe.
I will speak on the 415 Miramar Drive designation. I'm the owner of that property.
Excellent. And you?
We're here for Curtis Avenue. We're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, if you could all rise and we'll issue the oath. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. And with that, I believe we are ready for staff's presentation on the first item, J1.
We are ready. Melissa, if you're ready, please.
You got it.
Great. So this is an application requesting landmark designation for the property at 415 Miramar Drive. The project site is located on the north side of Miramar Drive. This whole neighborhood is zoned R1 single family residential. The lot is 40 feet in width and 80 feet in depth, and the house is approximately 1,200 square feet in
Can I
size.
interrupt just a second?
course.
I know last time we were seeing, so we don't have to turn around
No.
on our screens, we were
Oh.
able.
You can, so you have 2 buttons
Okay.
in front of you. You have
PC.
your PC, which is
There we
your
go.
computer, or the presentation button.
Thank you.
There you go.
Would you press?
There we go. There.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that question.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So the house is approximately 1,200 square feet in size. Our city survey notes that it's Spanish colonial in style, and it was built around 1928. The property to the east at 417 Miramar Drive actually is locally designated. It's the Chrysler House. As you probably saw, several homes on this street were built around the same time and in a similar style. So this could be a future potential historic district. Here's that south front-facing elevation from the street view. Here you can see up close, they have their arched entry porch. There's a front curved patio wall. They have the red tile roof. You can see up close here, you can see that stucco finish. And there is a prominent arched picture window that is facing out to the street. Here's the west elevation, and you can see that long driveway that's shared with the property to the west. Here's the north elevation. You can see that rear garage. This was originally a single car garage. You can see with the concrete patterns that there was probably a breezeway between the back of the home and the original single car garage here. So you can see those patterns. And then at some point it was expanded to a 2-car garage and attached to the back of the house. Here's the east elevation. There's one window along here that got filled, but it still has that lower trim, and you can see the recess work around that window space. Here are the interior photos that the owner provided. You can see the front living room with that tapered fireplace. The dining room had some of the original light fixtures. Here's the kitchen. You can see the tile work, the cabinets, and the built-in shelves. Here's that front living room again with the picture window on the left-hand side. There is one interior window, an original interior window. There was probably a side porch near the laundry space that may have been enclosed at some point. And then there you can see on the right-hand side the original built-in desk and light fixture. So this property definitely represents the Spanish colonial architectural style. As I mentioned, you can see that stucco finish. You can see the red tile roof, the arched entry porch, those neat curved patio walls. Most of the windows are recessed and single or double hung, and then that prominent arched picture window facing the street. So it was originally constructed in 1928 with that detached single car garage. In 1987, the electrical service was upgraded, and then the foundation was retrofitted in 1995. We do not have records regarding the garage expansion or the change out of some of the windows to vinyl. Most of the street-facing windows are original, but the side and rear exhibit vinyl openings. So Chrysler built all 4 of the Spanish homes along this block face. Not the ones across the street, but just these 4. And then a variety of people lived at this site, but most prominently was the Rice family. Martin F. and Mary Alice Rice lived here in 47, and then John Rice lived there at least through 1995, since he's on the permits. If the commission opted to designate this property, we would suggest it be the Rice House.
JC, can I ask a question somewhat related to this, but
Yes.
in those cases where certain materials or documentation is not there, like you said you're missing for the garage, is there a reason that occurs? Is it just out of, because you have so many records? Is it because you don't have a super great record keeping? I mean, without going into great detail, I was just curious.
Right. It's not uncommon for us to see this on historic properties. Over the years, they have a few modifications. It's possible that it wasn't permitted, and that's why we don't reflect it in our records. However, we weren't here. We don't know for certain. It's just going through all of our building permit records. It's not identified as being expanded or the windows being changed out. Although I will state, as it relates to windows, a pure retrofit, same opening, same size, does not require building permits. It's only when you have to break stucco. And since most of the recessed stucco work and the trim is in place, it's very possible it was just a retrofit. So at least for that element, you wouldn't need permits. The expansion of the garage, it's possible that maybe the owner has records that we just don't have. But we see this quite often on historic properties, that there are elements that have shifted over time and they're not represented in our permit records.
Well, my question, like I said, has relevance to this, but there was a property in question that was built as recently as 1973, and there were all kinds of records missing. And again, I just wonder, historically, I mean, that's not that long ago, although it's around 50 years ago, but is there a process that takes place when a property is built in terms of the way the records are maintained and kept? And I think you know what I'm getting at.
I will say this, we do have records in storage that have not been scanned. So I can tell you that I did not go into the vault and search through those. So it's very possible they could be in our storage vaults for items that have not been properly scanned and input into the system.
Okay. That you answered my question.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for this property, we consider the significance to be tied not only to the Spanish colonial architecture, which is one of the more prominent styles within the city, but also that these properties were built during a time when the city was a thriving resort and a growing residential community for working class families. If the Preservation Commission finds that the site meets the criteria for designation, staff recommends that you adopt the exemption declaration and approve the landmark designation for the property located at 415 Miramar Drive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now would be the time to receive public input. Would those in favor please step forward to the microphone and give your name and address for the record?
Hello, Commission. My name is Mary Hall. I am the owner of the property at 415 Miramar Drive. I'm here to ask for your consent to make the property a historic designation. The property is really a treasure. The Rice family took very good care of it, and I've learned a lot about the house from the neighbors who knew John Rice. He replaced the windows in 2016 for reasons of energy efficiency. The original windows were long gone. Apparently, what was in their place were lavalier windows that lost a lot of heat out of the home. It was impossible to keep the temperature right. Mr. Rice spent a long time, from what the neighbors tell me, getting the proper size for those windows. Regarding the garage, the other neighbors have the original garage, and those garages have gone through a lot of deterioration. They're not in good condition. They are the original 1928 and 1926 garages. I assume Mr. Rice or the Rice family did the garage probably even in the 50s to keep it up and keep it standing and reinforce the foundation of it. I do know it is the original redwood frame. Inside, it's quite well taken care of. The house has the original oak floors. It has special light fixtures that are almost 100 years old that are perfectly intact and working. And you saw the kitchen and the tile. So it's my intent to keep the home in its original condition and maintain it. And I hope that you will help me in that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission have any questions of the property owner? Seeing and hearing none, are there any other members of the public that wish to speak in support? And now would be the opportunity also to speak in opposition.
We do have one person on Zoom, Lakeisha Bearden. If you wish to speak on this item, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I do not wish to speak on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Then I believe this has concluded the public participation on this item. Is there a motion to close the public participation?
I also move.
Second?
May I have a second? All those in favor? Say aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none. So this has concluded the public hearing. Does the commission have any questions or comments on the item?
I have the one question. The house next door, this Chrysler house, is already a landmark then?
It is.
And did I understand correctly that he lived in the house that's being considered now?
So it doesn't appear that he lived in this house. It appears that he developed these properties
Okay.
and then multiple individuals lived in this house and then you had the Rice family.
Okay.
I didn't see anything in the directory stating that he lived at this property, but I did include some of the research. I think that's what you're seeing in the attachments, that he did live on the street, just not at this house.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Then looking at the recommendation, we've opened and closed our public hearing. There is an item 3 to adopt a resolution by title only, subject to the findings contained therein. So we do have a resolution before us. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the resolution. Let's see, do I have to say that?
I think that suffices.
Okay.
And we have a second?
Second.
Okay, if we could do a roll call vote.
Of course. Commissioner McNerney,
Aye.
Commissioner Aziz,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Matsuno,
Yes?
and Chair Caldwell.
Yes. So the item passes. Congratulations. That now moves us to item J2, our public hearing for consideration of a certificate of appropriateness requesting removal of the property from the list of potential historic resources and finding that the said actions are categorically exempt from the preparation of environmental documents pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. We have administered the public oath. Is there a motion to enter into the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no opposition, I think we are ready for staff's presentation.
Yes, if you're ready. Thank you. Perfect. So this is a certificate of appropriateness for the removal from the list of potential historic resources for the property at 2501 Curtis Avenue. So the project site is located at the corner of Curtis Avenue and Phelan Lane. This is a multifamily R2 neighborhood. The lot is 100 feet in width and 100 feet in depth. It is one parcel across 2 lots. And per the city survey, this is identified as a craftsman built around 1934, and it was given a B rating. Here are some Google images. You can see the front elevation off of Curtis Avenue, and then I show you here the side elevation off of Phelan Lane. Here's some interior photos that I took when we walked the property back in September. You can see that fireplace. I really wanted to show that the moldings around the doors and windows are still in place. And you can see the interesting ceiling within the living room. So staff received the historic inquiry form last September 9th. We walked the property on September 23rd, and then we issued an assessment to the owners on October 1st. We felt through our research, digging through the archives of the building division, the planning division, and the library archives, that the site could be eligible for local landmark designation. While a little unusual for a craftsman style, particularly with the exterior stonework, we still felt it was a good example of the craftsman style of architecture, and craftsman is our most prominent style within the city. We did find it interesting within the newspapers, the Redondo Reflex, that the site was used as an early religious center. And then also it was home to one of the few female engineers in the area. So the preservation ordinance does define potential historic resources as A or B rated structures within our city survey. It also notes that resources that are eligible for state or national register are included in that definition. The code does allow for owners to request removal from the list as long as they provide verifiable documentation, which in this case would be the historic resource evaluation received from GPA Consulting. Removal or demolition does require commission review, hence our presentation tonight, and it does outline that criteria within the code. And then the code states that demolition requests should include the proposed plans for future development. However, the owners of the property are just trying to figure out what they can do with it. And that's what we're hoping to determine tonight. And then from there, based upon your vote and determination, then they'll know what that next step is. And then the commission has the authority to require a memorial at the site if you were to allow removal but felt moved to document the history of the site. So GPA Consulting prepared their own resource evaluation, which is dated February 1st, 2022, and it's much more robust than what we prepared for the applicant because we're obviously utilizing the archives we have here at the city. They did their full research of the site and found for themselves that it's not eligible for designation on the local level, the state level, or the national register. As you probably saw within the report, there were several key points, but here are just a handful. They felt that the development did not have any important association with the early development patterns of this area. They also felt that because even though the structure has some craftsman elements, there were some key features that were not included in the site. It's also important to note that this was created by an owner builder and not built by a notable architect or contractor. It had been substantially altered over time, including the applied stonework. I think they noted that the windows had been changed out. So there were a variety of things that had changed that they felt truly altered the craftsman design of the home. And then while the history of the owners and residents was found to be interesting, they did not find any level of significance. So the site is not connected with any people of local prominence. So if you determine that you agree with the evaluation and approve removal from the list, then that means that the site can be demolished and redeveloped. The applicant was very forthright in the paperwork that they do intend to sell it to a developer if this is approved. It's an R2 zone, it's a 10,000 square foot lot. Per the base level of the zoning, they'd be allowed to do up to 3 full dwelling units. Staff recommends that the Preservation Commission review the supporting materials, take public testimony, and make a determination regarding the request for removal at 2501 Curtis Avenue. I do want to note that I prepared 2 different draft resolutions for your consideration, one granting approval for the removal from the list, and then another denying the request. And we want to pay close attention that if you were to go down the path of denial, we want to make sure we're very clear the reasons as to why we're denying the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now would be the time to receive public input. If we could have the property owners join us at the front. If you could give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Charles Spence. I live at 1940 Magnolia, Long Beach, California.
And my name is Audrey Von Ahrens. I'm an associate architectural historian at GPA Consulting, and we were contracted by Charles Spence, the owner of the property, to do a full evaluation of the property.
Did you have anything that you want to share with the commission?
Not really. I think the GPS report is pretty accurate, and it's our opinion, who lived in the house since 1972, that it's really not historical. It looks old and so forth. And the house, besides it's depleted, to get it up, it would cost a few $100,000 minimum just to be a big hardship, but just to get it up to rentable status. It's not even rented right now. It's sitting vacant. There's termite damage, and it's been through a lot. At one point, it even had a small loan from the city of Redondo Beach to rehabilitate it in the 80s, which didn't do much, but maybe fix the bathroom or so forth. But the house is basically depleted if you were to look at it.
Anything further to add?
Just to introduce myself again and reiterate that we were engaged by the property owner to, first we start with the site visit, and once we do the site visit and some initial research, we then provided Charles with our initial opinion and whether we would be willing to move forward to do a full evaluation and what our initial opinion would most likely be, and if he would like to proceed. And then after doing the site visit and then doing more in-depth research, we then evaluated the property against the National Register, California Register, and then local landmark programs, and made our professional determination based off of our findings, which I'm sure you've read the report back and forth. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. And I think that's pretty much it.
Does any member of the commission have any questions?
You may have said this, or it could have been notes. How long have you owned the property?
My mother had bought it in 1972.
72. And since that time, what's been the history of the occupation of the house?
What do you mean?
Who's been living in the house since then?
It's been family living there. She occupied the house the whole time.
And what, was there anything in particular that prompted you to decide to go this direction? Was it just,
Well, yeah, the house itself is, I was saying, it's basically, the work would just be worth more, it's just not worth to repair the house up to what it should be. It is sitting dead center in a 10,000 square foot lot, which is basically unmanageable. The fields next door, the Edison Fields, it basically resembles that. It's just a bunch of weeds. Their lot is the same way, they put a bike path in there to manage that for other reasons. But you can't manage it, a 10,000 square foot lot, especially with the drought, a homeowner cannot. It's just massive lot. The house is termite damage, has structural issues, foundation wise as well.
have you decided what direction you're going to go in? 3 units, 2 units, or?
No, because it would basically be sold to a developer.
I see.
And it would probably, whatever their style they're currently building in North Redondo.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
Just that our governor would be thrilled to consider that there would be 3 units put on this property, since that's one of his directives. That's all.
I have a very strong opinion about this property because as soon as I saw it, it called to mind a very important historic landmark in Los Angeles called the Loomis House, which has the same stone cladding. And Mr. Loomis also was a owner builder. And so the fact that the original owner was also the builder, to me, is not disqualifying. And according to all the standards, both at the federal, state, and local levels, there's elements of the house, and I think the blue folder item, the other citizen who left that item also pointed this out. It's very distinctive. It might be one of a kind. And so, the standards exemplifies special elements of the city's aesthetic history, embodies distinctive characteristics of a method of construction, unique location or singular physical characteristics. So I feel very strongly that it meets the standards. I don't think any property is expected to check off every single criteria of the standards. And then one other thing I wanted to bring up, because I was reading through the construction history. And the first item about this construction history was the application of the stone veneer cladding to all exterior elevations covering the original wood shingle by 1945. But there's really no actual date known for that. In the report, there was a footnote from the Redondo Reflex. And so I actually spent some time and dug out. And I want to read one part. I can read the whole thing because it's pretty short. But at the end, it says this. One of the first houses to be built in North Redondo by Mr. Campbell, located at 2501 Curtis. And I can't seem to slide this. I can't read the bottom of it. I apologize. But it says, it is a rock house with pressure-treated creosoted lumber. And I can't read the last line, but it said it was constructed to look like it was meant to last, which to me implies that that stone structure part of it might have been original. We don't know that. But the way this article was written kind of tells me that it was part of the original house. But just that the statement, it was one of the first houses built in North Redondo. That to me is a very strong argument in favor of historic landmark. And then the article itself sort of points out that this owner was twice featured in the Los Angeles Times for his activities. So he was within the local community something of prominence. I mean, it's not every citizen in our community who gets 2 articles written about them in the Los Angeles Times. And so I kind of feel strongly, I think there's other options that you could pursue. My first thought was, what about suggesting to them the 124 South Guadalupe, where they restored the home, made it into a jewel, a historical architectural jewel, and then they built 3 units behind it. But then I saw the site plan, and it looks very difficult to do anything like that. I don't know if it's possible for variances to build like an ADU or a couple ADUs on that site. But I just felt very strongly that it was very distinctive. And then the last thing I'll say is, and this is going to be a question for staff later in the meeting. I don't feel it's a good argument in favor of demolition that the property is, as you said, depleted when the person requesting the demolition is the owner. Because then the neglect it's your neglect that led property to that state. So that's kind of my feelings about the property. I'll let anybody else speak now, or if you want to.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Matsumo. I think you make some very valid points. I just wanted to reiterate that in terms of the evaluation and the report, what we were considering was historic integrity, and something may have significance, but just because it has significance doesn't mean that it retains integrity to be eligible to convey its significance. In this case, we actually evaluated that there was no historical significance under any of the criteria. So while there are elements that I think were a valid starting point from the survey's perspective, at the survey, you do a very broad scope. You look at the broad history. So there was a female engineer at an earlier date. It's a great reason to flag a property. It has stone cladding, which appears similar. It might evoke the Lummis house. Great reason to flag a property. But when we did the initial research and dug deeper into the history of this property, and especially when we actually went on site and look at the construction, you can see that the stone is applied to wood shingle. That is why some of the windows are set back. So the construction history is not well documented, but you can see from visual observations that there are definitely misconceptions from the visual standpoint of it being an original Arroyo stone house. Therefore, the initial finding in the survey was that it was a good example of a craftsman and potentially one of the earliest Arroyo stone houses. And on further investigation, and all full disclosure, we actually did not have some of the building permit records when we wrote this report. We had contacted the city and put a public records request in and did not receive those to date, but we had already had a deadline to meet. So I was actually really happy to see that the staff report did include some of the building permits, and they actually affirm what we thought from observation, that although it likely had a rock foundation, it likely had the rock chimney, the rest of the building is very piecemeal. All but one window is not original. They've all been replaced. And therefore, the question becomes, what is the historic significance? The eaves are not well crafted. It's lacking a lot of craftsmanship that is essential to something like the Lummis house. While the original builder might have been noted in Los Angeles Times newspaper articles at the time, as a historian, we research somebody's name, and that actually happens quite often. It doesn't necessarily mean that they rise to a level of significance that represents the community as a whole. So I just wanted to reiterate that information. I think you made some really valid points, but based on our research, we didn't feel that this house itself, the property itself, rose to a level of significance because of the way it was constructed or represents a particular style and the point of history. There is a historical aerial that does show the property soon after it was constructed. And we did reference the city's historic context that for this area actually cites the early development of this neighborhood being about at least a decade earlier. This happened a decade afterward. So it wouldn't actually be one of the earliest houses. It was certainly an early one. We are talking about the 1930s, and it's Redondo Beach, Los Angeles. But to also reiterate the point that the staff report states that it's a good example of craftsman style, but it's one of the most prominent, craftsman style is one of the most prominent styles in Redondo. So we know that there are many better examples of the craftsman style. And I'll stop there. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to reiterate anything or go deeper into our findings.
I guess it's kind of a follow-up to Jeff's question relative to the house itself. Is that, did you, when you deciding what to do with the house, did you look at alternatives other than selling it to a developer?
Yeah, we did. We did list it for sale. We tried to list it for some people that would like to buy historical homes. They did not feel it was historical as well.
They didn't.
That's what they felt. And they would not put the money to rehab the house for that reason. Just the quality, like she was saying, the craftsmanship's not there inside either. There's like 1x4 moldings. Just anybody can make those today. They sell better looking, molding already made. It's somebody can make that stuff in wood shop. It's not high quality, or it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. Even though roof that's wood that you saw, it's pretty much rotted and not secured in the house itself. It does leak. It doesn't appear to be repairable from what I'm told. But that's it. And then the rocks on the outside of the house, it's not completely finished. So maybe it's 3/4 of the way finished. So if you see the side of the house and the back of the house from the driveway, it's just not finished.
Have you lived in the house during any of this period of time?
What was that?
Have you lived in the house
I
during?
have.
Yeah.
I grew up in the house.
Oh, you did? Okay. It does appear that, at least from the pictures, I did not get an opportunity to look at the house in person, but it does look that, I'd like to get Jeff's comments too on it, is that it does look like there's quite a bit of deferred maintenance or work that would have to go into it. I don't know. I have no idea what it would cost to bring it up to that.
Just the fact that, the rocks aren't finished, you could see right where he just stopped. It's almost like, for whatever reason, they did not finish the rock on the outside of the house. So that makes it unique, but it's just not, how would you finish that? It's not complete.
Are there any other questions or comments? Then I know we have a member of the public that is joining us virtually.
Ms. Lakeisha Bearden, if you wish to speak, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I have a question about this particular property. I know the property has been on the market for over a year now. It's taken off and put back. So we live around the corner, so we've been kind of keeping an eye on this particular property, interested to see if a new developer was going to come and kind of build on the space. I guess my question would be, when in fact did the owner move out of the property, if I may ask that question?
Are we aware of when it became vacated, or?
I am not, but I suspect Mr. Spence would know when it was vacated.
Very good idea, a little over a year.
So it's been a year. Okay.
Does that conclude your public comment?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have any other public comments?
Melissa, do we have any e-comments that have come through?
Let me just refresh. No, that concludes public comment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It would now be appropriate for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So our public participation has been concluded. Does any member of the commission have any questions or comments for staff or just in general?
I also had a question about the removal without the subsequent plans. It seems like that's written into the ordinance, and we're being asked to sort of ignore that?
You're not asked to ignore it per se. However, the owners at this time don't quite know what they can do with the property yet. So they have, essentially, they have the information from the survey, which was prepared by preservation consultants. They have the information from staff, and now they have GPA consulting and their evaluation. So they're more or less trying to figure out what can the future of this property be before they engage someone to prepare drawings. You're correct, though, Vice Chair Matsuno, that is what the code states, that the commission is to consider what the new development would look like, similar, as you said, to 124 South Guadalupe. We were able to prepare, have plans prepared that were in a similar style as the historic structure. In this case, we're attempting to figure out, is this truly a historic resource? And then from your determination tonight, we can provide direction to the applicant.
Then if I could just, based off of my review of the materials, I tend to side with staff, in which case I probably would not approve the certificate of appropriateness for the removal of the property. However, I was going to ask for maybe the benefit of those that are still evaluating or considering how they're looking at this. Is it possible to make this contingent and require them to come back if the commission was to express maybe some support for this, that might allow those that are in consideration of purchasing and developing it to begin that process? Again, I just ask, I don't know how everybody else feels, but if you chose to side with the evaluation of GPA consulting, and we're willing to approve it, would it be appropriate for the commission to lay some groundwork for bringing this back?
It's a little bit tricky because once we approve it from removal of the list, it's no longer a historic resource and it's no longer under your jurisdiction. So it would be unfair and inappropriate to request that a basic R2 development come back to this group. It would just be an administrative review by right through staff. If there were misgivings and you wanted to see what the future development looked like before making a determination, you do have the option to continue the public hearing and ask to see some conceptual drawings. You do have that option. However, I do want to restate, they don't have somebody who's interested in the property yet, so they don't quite know where it'll land. But they do have opportunities to develop around the structure, not all that different from the Guadalupe project that Vice Chair Matsuno had mentioned. There are other options, accessory dwelling units, expansion and rehabilitation. So you have a variety of decisions to consider tonight.
So have you discussed with the owner the possibility of ADUs on that? Because I was curious because the property, like he mentioned, is smack dab in the middle of the lot. And I was just wondering if there's enough space in that perimeter to put, maybe a couple ADUs in the back corners if you had sort of a historic variance. Because if, for example, and I was thinking about this before, if this came before us as a request for landmark designation, I think it would be a pretty solid candidate and most likely would pass for the reasons I stated about the distinctiveness of it. So if it was to become a historic landmark, would it be eligible for variances to push the ADUs sort of into the corners of the lot? To have a modified setbacks and whatnot?
Yes.
Okay.
So the property would be eligible for historic variances that would come to you and then later go to the Planning Commission for review. We did have a couple of developers talk to staff about this property, none who are financially involved with the site, but ask questions such as, could the building itself be shifted on the property and then you develop behind it and then you have more space? That's an option. That's something that somebody could propose to this group. Like I said, you could do accessory dwelling units on this site. There are a few creative solutions that could be explored, but somebody would have to be willing to design those.
If I could just follow up, Vice Chair Matsuno, we did have those, some very preliminary discussions at the counter with a couple of folks regarding the potential to create some accessory dwelling units on the property. It is possible. The thresholds for the accessory dwelling units, the size requirements are very low. So you can actually configure them in a lot of different ways. I mention all that just to note that building a couple of accessory dwelling units on the property does not necessarily mean that they would need a variance. So it wouldn't have to come back to the commission. Now, because of the state law, we have to process accessory dwelling units in a ministerial fashion, meaning that they are not subject to public hearings. And so in many instances, in a couple of instances, staff has issued administrative decisions noting that the proposed accessory dwelling units are in conformance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So I just wanted to mention that because there are ways because the setbacks and distance requirements for these doesn't necessarily mean that they would need a variance. And on top of that, they don't need to provide parking either. So
Right.
just wanted to make that note.
Okay.
Would they still have to comply with whatever the density requirements are for that property?
Interestingly, yes, there's different requirements based on the density for multifamily properties. You could do, like I said, a couple of detached units that, you could also convert some of the interior space to a junior accessory dwelling unit. You could there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that on the site.
Okay.
You could do attached ADUs. There's a lot of different ways. Depending on, because it is a B-rated structure, any alterations or changes to the structure would have to come back to the commission for review.
Are there any additional comments or questions?
So staff, what is your specific recommendation on this? Is it to go forward?
Well, we didn't provide a specific recommendation because you now have differing opinions before you. You have the staff assessment as we wrote it, we wrote it and we walked the site together. And I included the research that I utilized for that so that you could see what I saw. And then now you have GPA Consulting's historic resource evaluation report, and it's more in depth. It gives you a little bit more history. It talks through the period of significance for craftsman style. It talks through the stonework that's more traditional, like the Loomis House, their Arroyo Seco neighborhoods. It gives you more depth to that. So we were looking to get your thoughts on having those differing opinions with all the information that we have at hand.
Was any of your thinking, I'll use thinking on this related to the condition of the structure and or what appears to be the amount of work that would require, plus the fact that there is mention made that there have been modifications to the structure during that time? I am all for saving every house possible. I just wonder, trying to read between the lines here, are you looking at this saying, yeah, this is a good house, but it's got a lot to be done to get it into shape? I'm not sure we would approve it at this time. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it does look like it is in need of a lot of repairs.
That's correct. We come across quite a few properties that have deteriorated and need maintenance. So we attempt not to make our final determinations on whether or not the site is properly kept. Most of the landmarks you designate require a lot of love to bring it back to life. So that didn't necessarily weigh into our determination on this. As I said, we went through the history of who lived there, of it being utilized as an early religious center. The individuals, the female engineer that lived there, and then also the very interesting style of the home. However, GPA Consulting does go through those elements as well and gives their reasoning as to why they feel those elements do not rise to the level of significance for the property.
How do we establish, there's conversation I'm hearing that doesn't rise to the element, to the significance, and does. And that very few houses have all the structural elements to qualify. How, is there a percentage of elements that should be present, or is there, how do we, that seems like a very gray area to me.
It is a gray area, but we look at the character defining features for the style of architecture. As we saw with the Spanish colonial earlier, we're looking for that interesting trowel finish stucco. We're looking for the red tile roof. We see the arched windows, the recessed double hungs. We're looking for those features. There isn't necessarily a perfect number of items that we're looking for. However, when we get to the site, we are attempting to assess that the main craftsman features are there. The historic resource evaluation, as she had noted earlier, with the stonework being applied on the outside of the shingles, lends itself to thinking it was just an afterthought. It also has unusual patterns. It has different types of stonework. So it's a question of, is that significant because it's so distinctive, or right? Or is it something unusual that one homeowner did and it was just his cool idea, and maybe it wasn't completely finished. So that's why we're here, to dissect whether or not we feel that, is this an interesting house or is it a significant house? Does it tie into the development of North Redondo, this neighborhood, the history of this area in such a way that we feel we need to save it? Or do we think that maybe it's just an unusual, interesting structure to look at when you pass by, but it doesn't rise to the level of it being a prominent building or tied to prominent individuals?
How do I get back to this?
Go back to the agenda packet.
Do we have any final staff comments?
Oh, right
In
there,
closing?
agenda packet?
Yeah.
No?
If
You look like you want to say
click
something.
No, I think enough has been said. In response just to the question about the integrity of the structure, we want to make sure the majority of the materials or the character defining features are present and identifiable. In many cases that we come across, there have been alterations, and we, although a house may look historic, upon closer inspection, we'll see that the features are actually new. The siding is new, windows are new, those types of things, and so that makes them ineligible for designation. And we've come across situations like that in the past, where we unfortunately, we notify the property owner that we would not bring it forward for designation because of the alterations. So that does occur. And like I said, it's for those properties where the majority of those features have been altered, replaced, that type of thing. So just wanted to kind of follow up with that.
Thank you very much.
I'll say one more thing. Now that I've been thinking while you've been talking, we're not experts on historic preservation, but we're here to serve Redondo Beach. And what does Redondo Beach mean? So the assessment that we provide is under the lens of what is Redondo Beach and how does this tie into our context and the interesting people who lived here and built this community. GPA Consulting, they're architectural historians. This is what they look at through a variety of cities across the country probably. They probably have really amazing big projects. So this would be something quite small compared to the Loomis house, the Gable house, right? For us, for locally, what we look at, like the little Spanish colonial on Miramar Drive, we're looking at these small homes because that is our history. So to a certain extent, we have these criteria, we have the local, the state, the national registers. All of that is beautifully detailed within the historic resource evaluation. But your staff is serving Redondo Beach and what we think is best for Redondo Beach. So that's what you see in our assessment, is what is the history and what serves the city, and what do we think is important for the city. However, you have experts here who have a differing opinion. So we leave it to you to make the right decision.
Thank you very much. And a lot of times that's a very good point for us to kind of take in, because we need that local lens and we need that community thought process when evaluating these things. So at this time, we do not have a staff recommendation. We do have two resolutions. One was prepared for approval and one was prepared for denial. Do I have a motion?
My motion, or I would move for the denial.
And I would second that. So shall we go to a roll call vote?
Yes.
Before you do, if you move for denial, if the current homeowner doesn't have the financial wherewithal or desire to do anything to this property, what happens next?
I was thinking about that, but then my feeling was it is not our business to go into what the financial situation of the owner is and what the possibilities are. Because I was thinking, well, I was thinking to ask, well, what is the estimated value of the property? And,
Right.
could you get an equity loan to do the repairs? But I don't really think that's our purview.
Well, or else trying to sell it as is, where somebody who has the interest in the wherewithal to do that work, but
And also, if I may, any determination made tonight is appealable to the city council. So if you were to move in that direction, the owners still have the opportunity to take it to the next level.
Are members of the commission notified if our decisions are appealed?
Yes,
Okay. Because I remember you notified us about the Catalina Station appeal.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. If we move forward in the direction of denial, we do want to make some specific findings. I did make some notes regarding particularly what Vice Chair Matsuno had noted. So if we're going to go in that direction, I'd be happy to highlight some of the key points that you had made, if I may.
Please do.
Before the group determines. And you can correct me, please, Vice Chair. You had noted that the property is very distinctive and one of a kind, that the characteristics represent a certain method of construction, and this site is one of the first houses built in North Redondo Beach. The owner that built the property was featured in the Los Angeles Times at least twice. And let me see if there were other elements. I think that was it. Were there any other key points you would like to add?
I would just mention also, we just approved as a landmark a house that had vinyl windows added. And so I also feel like the fact that I was looking at the pictures and it looked like some of the windows are original, others have been replaced. But the fact that there's some windows replaced that are not original should also not be a disqualifier.
okay.
So perhaps the point we would make if that resolution were to move forward is that while modifications were made to the structure, the shape and form of the building remains intact. Does that sound appropriate?
I believe so. And thank you for summarizing that. We do have a motion and a second. If we could move to a roll call.
Yes. Commissioner McNerney.
This was the motion to deny, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
No.
Commissioner Aziz.
To deny, correct?
To deny, yes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matsuno.
Yes.
And Chair Caldwell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes item J2. It brings us to item K, items continued from previous agendas.
We do not currently have any continued items.
Item L, items for discussion prior to action.
We do not have any items for discussion tonight.
Item M, items from staff.
The last time we met back on May 4th, we had some brief discussions about the library and what was happening with the library. So we've connected with the Community Services Department, and so now we're a little bit more involved in how that's going. So we'll be providing more updates as as they make some determinations. They're still in the early phase of gathering input from the community. And it's a coastal property. So, so we're now a part of the conversation, and you will be too.
Thank you. Item N, commission items and referrals to staff.
Yes, I have one, I guess, item. I didn't know whether to bring this up now or at the public participation in non-agenda items as a member of the public, but the landmark number 59 at 921 Emerald Street, the Zerborg House. It has had the construction fencing around it for over 4 years now. And including there's the portable toilets on there, and it's being just sort of neglected, to say the least. And I'm just wondering any update on like what's going on with that property.
You have excellent timing. Today, there was more legal discussion about how to move forward with that property. So I prepared all the documents again, staff report, resolution, and supporting research on the property back to the city attorney's office. So they are re-reviewing the site right now.
Okay. So it should be coming to us one way or another, or?
If it remains a designated property, then it does not need to
Okay.
come back to you.
Okay.
But our ultimate goal, of course, is to maintain the property and clean up the site.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other commission items and referrals to staff? Then I shall entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.